about the people who have tried to vote in 2 states. They've dismantled that. The Election Assistance Commission, not very well known, but this is the group that works with individual registrars in states, making sure their voting machines are safe. Trump recently fired the Democrats and made the Republican quit. Why are he doing all these things? I believe it's because Donald Trump intends to interfere in this year's elections. He knows if there was a free and fair election, his policies would be rejected at record levels.
What do you mean interfere?
Whether that takes, I think that what we just saw was this was the opening shot. The opening shot of trying to undermine Americans' confidence that their votes will be actually counted and mean something. I fear as well that if he tries to pull something that could potentially, he's not ruled out bringing ICE to the polls. He's not even ruled out the idea of trying to bar certain voting machines.
Well, we're going to talk about what is U.S. law in terms of presence and how those election facilities are going to be run with our 2 experts next. Senator Warner, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back. Well, I see both sides. I see Bill Clinton's side, and I see Donald Trump's side. And this is the reason why I say the whole system is broken. You can hear other people talk about their facts, pertaining to it being surrounding around the rich, pertaining to how the banking system and everything else does what they do. And basically it's broken to the point you can't repair it. The only way to repair it is replace it. Now, the next question is this: what are you going to replace it with? And whatever you're going to replace it with, is it going to be as vulnerable as what the first system was? Because there's no doubt you got people getting help that shouldn't be getting help. You got people that ain't getting help that should be getting help. You got scammers. You got fraudsters. You got all the above, from the top all the way down to the bottom. So, I mean, it's a cesspool. It's a cesspool, and like I said, I can see both sides of it, and that's the reason why I have eliminated myself out of voting in either or presidential federal election for the past 2 times. And the way it looks, I'm probably not going to vote this time either. Because if they can't come up with no other better solution than what they've been getting toward choosing between the lesser of the 2 evils, count me out. Just count me out. I don't want to be a part of this. Because I can see where this is going. And one day my granddaughter up in heaven is going to pull on my whatever kind of tail. And she's going to say, Grandpa, how come you didn't try to stop this? How come you didn't tell them that what the area that they was heading off into was wrong? And I'm going to say, young lady, I did. I did tell them again and again and again. And finally you get tired of wasting energy and time on them. You just kind of just shut up and let them do their own thing. In other words, if you give them enough rope, they'll eventually hang themselves. And that's basically what they've done. That's basically exactly what they've done. And you don't think the people in China can see this? Sure they can. You don't think the people in Russia can see this? Sure they can. You don't think the people in Africa and India and all them other big countries can see this? Sure they can. They ain't stupid. They see where the hippie era had went in here, basically made a catastrophe out of the American government, to the point that now you can't trust nothing or nobody. Sad. Really, really intensely, absolutely, harshly, grossly sad.
Load from both of you what we should be understanding about this past week. Chris, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, appointed you to run the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's CISA, that Senator Warner was just talking about, to help states protect their election infrastructure during 2020. That was a secure election, you said. The President fired you for saying that. This past Thursday, he again insisted it was not secure. Did you hear anything that changes your assessment?
Not at all. In fact, I would say that further bolsters my confidence in the security of the 2020 election between what has been released, disclosed last week, and all the information and the results of court challenges and other things in the intervening 6 years. 6 years. But it's also, I think, a good opportunity to reflect on the good work that the millions of hundreds of thousands, if not million or more, election workers that helped execute the 2020 election, the tens of thousands of federal government employees that worked to protect the 2020 election. That was not something that came together a couple weeks before 2020. That was years in the making, and that work was solid.
Secretary Mullen said Friday he'll have a plan within 30 days. We are 100 days out from the midterms.
Yeah, and in 2020, we had our CISA election security plan out in February of 2020.
So just to, before we move on to the current day, just to put a fine point on this for you, Chris. So during his first few months in office, the president issued executive order against you, saying you promoted the censorship of election information, and he claimed you dismissed election malfeasance and serious vulnerabilities with voting machines. In Intel speak, what you saw, interference would be hacking, changing some of the language the president used in those on-camera remarks. What you saw, how would you describe the Chinese role in the 2020 election?
Well, I think there was an honest debate and discussion across the intelligence community about what China's intent were. But ultimately, when it came out in the intelligence community assessment that was released in the spring of 2021, it was that China had a preference and that they were not in favor of President Trump, but their efforts were principally limited to influencing the American public, seeking to pay journalists, media, but it was an influence effort.
Journalist, if you're getting.
And that's just the nature of the beast.
That's fair.
That's the nature of the
It was
beast.
an influence operation, and they have been doing that stuff since the mid-aughts, early 2000s.
Yes.
This is not net new. They did turn up the heat, and they are still doing it today. We have a significant and serious counterintelligence and counterespionage problem with China, and that's what I really want to see us talking about. What are they doing today? We have to put more emphasis on that.
Okay, here is exactly what President Trump said on Thursday about China.
They did not disclose to me as president or to anyone else, and to the best of our knowledge, they did not inform Congress. In fact, all they kept saying is, this is the most secure election in the history of our country. A standard, very pat line that was divvied out to say.
Was the president informed of what China was doing? You were in those rooms.
In January of 2020, there was a National Intelligence Committee community a memorandum about the 2020 election that talked about the vulnerabilities we saw in systems and the work we needed to do there. But it also talked about the intent of adversaries, and there were countless memos after that. So, a lot of these products were in senior executive and policymakers' binders, their intelligence binders, every single day. We use those to get out there and talk to the American people. I had an op-ed in September of 2020 to the general public that talked about various threat actors, including China. So I have a hard time believing that it didn't get up into the Oval.
Okay. Because China was described as attempting to influence, it was Iran and Russia, primary actors directly undermining the election in some of those 2020 statements. It sounds like you're saying he didn't read the memo.
Look, we could not have been more clear in my view.
Or search the web.
Or search the web.
Right.
We did report on it on this network. I know, I remember. David, I want to go to you because the president said a lot of things. One of the other elements this week was what the Justice Department put forward. Harmeet Dillon there sent a letter to states saying any election official who knowingly retains non-citizens on voter registration lists or facilitates non-citizens in casting ballots will be held criminally liable. And then DHS Secretary Mullen described here the consequence of refusing to participate in their program. Take a listen.
If the election officials, once we gave them the information they need to secure their elections, and they chose not to, then those individuals can also be held accountable by fines, by penalties, and even, depending on how far it goes, prison time.
You speak to election officials. Are they concerned? That sounds like a threat.
Hardly a week goes by where someone in this administration doesn't threaten election officials with arrests. This week we had at least 2 prominent administration officials doing that, and it's become almost a running joke. they've been into this administration 18 months now. The total number of election officials who've been arrested for wrongdoing is 0. And that's appropriate because not only have they committed no crime, they've actually acted heroically and patriotically to support and facilitate our democracy through a pandemic and in the aftermath of disinformation. What Secretary Mullen's talking about there, he's trying to pressure states to surrender sensitive voter data to the federal government. And the DOJ has filed over 30 lawsuits about that, and they are 0-16 in those lawsuits so far. He's threatening them with arrest for following the law. And so I think the election officials in the states feel very confident that they are following their state laws, they're following federal laws, they're doing everything they can to make sure this election is going to be safe, convenient, and secure.
We are 107 or so days out from November 3rd. What Secretary Mullen talked about as well is he said there's going to be a public plan in 30 days, stay tuned, but he wants them to use the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements program, the SAVE program, to screen for the citizenship of voters. How does that work? For people at home who may say, sure, there's a law that says non-citizens cannot vote in federal elections, they say, well, what's the problem with showing an ID?
So the SAVE system is a federal system that takes data from federal sources. It's currently in legal limbo because there are some challenges over whether it's legal or not. And from the limited federal data that it has, it can then match it in some cases to data that states may choose to share with it. The problem is that DHS admits that data is incomplete. They don't have all of the data. So a lot of the individuals that they might flag are actually citizens. They just don't have the documentation in the federal database to back that up. The states actually have far better data. The states are doing a really good job with this. And the reason they have better data is because when you go into a motor vehicles agency and you get a license, particularly a real ID, you have to show proof of legal presence. And that data, what you've shown, what you've documentarily shown to a government official, is kept in that database. And so you see election officials in states like Georgia, which is run by Republicans, and states like Michigan, which are run by Democrats, and all across the country, able to do a better job of confirming that there are non-citizens on their voter lists than the federal government could ever do. And they've been in office for 18 months. And now they're talking about coming up with a plan in 30 days.
Right.
And in that 18 months, they've only charged 39 people throughout the entire country with voting as non-citizens.
Chris, we were checking for what election officials were saying after Thursday's revelations. Republican officials in West Virginia and in Utah say they have no outreach from the White House about direct election threats. They said, you got them, bring them. Utah said they actually want the election security resources to be restored and to have the federal government stop filing frivolous, again, this is a quote, lawsuits that consume our precious time and taxpayer resources. There are, 1,000 people who were cut from the agency you used to run. What should be happening to make sure that these officials have what they need? Because they said they do want some federal help.
Well, first off, exactly what Secretary Warner in West Virginia highlighted. If there is intelligence that needs to be shared with the states, get it to them. And typically, you share the intelligence with the affected parties prior to making a public announcement. So if there was something that new in the Thursday night address that needed to get out to election officials, that should have gone out Wednesday or Thursday morning, and as of Friday it had not trickled down to West Virginia. In 2020, we conducted 33 classified briefings with election officials. 2020, 33. As far as I can tell, there have been no classified briefings with election officials since the beginning of this administration. So number one, we need to start the partnership and engagement with election officials, get them the intelligence they need. We need to recapitalize CISA, rehire CISA, stand up the Election Security Initiative. We need FBI task forces. We need the DNI mission centers all around election security. And we need to give them the funding and the resources they need to modernize their security systems.
Exactly.
And get the people out there that conduct these safe, convenient, secure elections.
And David, what are you hearing from the officials you speak with? It is the states that administer the elections, but what kind of federal help do they even want?
Well, remember, and Chris alluded to this, in the first few months of this administration, they dismantled all of the work that the first Trump administration under the leadership of Chris had built and the Biden administration continued. It took a long time to build trust and credibility and expertise so that states would welcome federal assistance. That's not their normal status. And they built that up admirably. And starting in February of 2025, almost on day one, they dismantled all of it. And so all of those things that Chris was talking about that are so essential to push back on foreign influence campaigns, they're gone. On the bright side, and this is a pretty limited bright side, that happened early in the administration. So the states have been able to prepare for that. They have been working and networking amongst themselves to fill that gap. And at the end of the day, they have paper ballots.
Yes.
They audit those paper ballots to make sure that they're counted properly. They've hardened their systems, their voter registration databases. It's going to be a secure election.
Thank you, gentlemen, both of you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I want to share my opinion about this real quick. If we can put somebody on the moon, if we can have a lotto of basically putting out millions, if not billions of dollars, knowing that there's only going to be one winner, if we can do some of the most sophisticated stuff in the world and make sure that it's done accurately and professionally, how come we cannot have a federal election and make sure that it's concrete, authentic regarding its integrity? We can. It's just a matter of people getting their heads together and figuring out a proper system and doing it. Now, I'm not all that tech savvy when it comes to the phone, but it seems to me like the phone would be one way of doing it, but then again, anybody can grab up anybody's phone and have access to that phone. So that's not really no way of securing it. So how other way would it be done? It would require some sort of way of branding that particular person with their fingerprints, their eye retinal or face, whatever you call it, recognition, and then making sure that whenever a person casts a vote, that they cannot cast no more than one vote at one time. And it is the right person that's casting the vote. Kind of like a gun. They can actually have a sophisticated gun to where cannot nobody shoot that gun and discharge it unless the right person is holding the gun, holding the handle of the gun. Now, you could always cut somebody's hand off and put their hand against the gun and use their trigger finger to pull the trigger and do it that way, but that would be the only way that you could do it pertaining to the sophisticated guns. But it would cost so much more money to build a gun like that. It would be ethical in building guns like that because it costs too much. Well, we got a gun problem. We got a obesity problem. We got a voting problem, and we got clarification problems. And somebody needs to sit down and figure out what's going on, how it's going on, and how can we clear the air pertaining to the legitimacy of all this. Because whenever you have a society that's questioning its own government, then you have a spooky society. You don't really have no longer a bounding secure government, because now people are questioning the authenticity of it. And there's no doubt you're going to have bad actors, but that's where you create a system to eliminate those bad actors. That's where you create a system that will double check the check to make sure that it's done correctly.
Got a big day, World Cup finals in nearby New Jersey. I know you'll be attending those. So will the President of the United States, the President of Mexico, the Canadian Prime Minister. Given the threat environment, are you confident in the security measures?
Absolutely. We've worked so close with our federal, state, and local partners in law enforcement. We have been preparing for this for literally over a year, over 1,000 exercises, table-topping all the scenarios. So we're with the best, and particularly with NYPD, the world's greatest police force. I feel very confident in our security. And we're so happy to welcome the eyes of the world, the entire planet is going to be watching what is happening right here in the New York City area. So it's exciting, very exciting time for us.
Truly billions watching, and we will be too. Governor, I want to ask you about a decision that you made this past week that made very big headlines. You signed an executive order to ban large-scale data centers for a year. These are those big buildings that help to power artificial intelligence technology centers. It was just a few months ago you said data centers were a local decision for municipalities. What changed for you?
I would say what changed was talking to the localities and realizing they don't have the negotiating ability to, or have the clout to be able to demand that their communities benefit from this in a more dramatic way. They also don't have the ability to insist that these companies bring their own power or pay more for the grid. They don't have an ability to say no to tax breaks. And so I decided that I could do much more, especially in this, actually flooding the zone is what's happening now. We have over 30 applicants, so in a very short time I changed my position saying, you know what, the state has to lead here, but it's not about being the first, it's about being the first to get it right. And we will get it right over the course of this year and help those localities negotiate the right way, make sure keeping track of how much water is being consumed, doing a study of that during this year, but also insisting that these companies, and they're welcome with the conditions and the rules that we set forth, that they also contribute to the larger grid, because this is a huge tax on our grid, and I want to make sure that the power is there, our limited power is there for the large companies that are creating jobs, like the Micron that we recruited here with 50,000 jobs. So we'll get a balance, but I'll tell you this, people want protection. New Yorkers want protection. There's a lot of anxiety. Companies want certainty. We'll give them both.
Well, governors from red states like Missouri, Montana, Wyoming, they signed this White House Ratepayer Protection Pledge, which I guess has AI data centers sign on to promising not to increase consumer prices, like companies, OpenAI and Amazon say they'll help cover the cost of infrastructure upgrades. Have you talked to these companies, about doing the same in New York? Why isn't a White House pledge like that sufficient?
Asking these companies to keep their word on how much they're going to consume. I'm more realistic than I am, perhaps. I'm willing to say I will get it right in New York. We'll work with the companies, but also and OpenAI. Absolutely, this is a place where innovation is welcome and celebrated. But my view is, if you're going to succeed in New York because of our talent and our resources and our people, I want to make sure that New Yorkers succeed as well. So it's not a one-way street. I don't want the companies coming in and telling us how to do things in our state, but they can be welcome when I lay out the rules of the world of the road, which they will embrace. I mean, once they know how to play the game, how to do things in New York, they'll want to come, but I need some breathing room. So my agencies, I've got 7 agencies dedicated to different elements of this, the economic development benefits for communities, how we manage how much they're going to be consuming in water, how we make sure that, I mean, just to say, make sure the ratepayers don't pay more, how do you enforce that? I'm more realistic. I want to get things done and make it really be effective.
It sounds like you want evidence to help get you to yes, but in the meantime, you are hearing concerns from unions, for example, that this is going to turn away jobs and that it'll send a signal that New York is not a place for companies to invest long term. How do you address that?
That's not the right conclusion from what I've done. We've been very clear. And as someone who's created more union jobs in this state than anybody in history, the largest private sector development in American history is going on right now with this Micron. That is 20 years of union jobs building this. We also have tens of thousands of union jobs over years of building the Gateway Tunnel, which was stymied, stuck, not happening until I unstuck it. So I've got more jobs for union members. They don't have to worry about my commitment to their jobs, but wouldn't they be rather building jobs, that there's jobs that remain after the construction season is over, that the project is built, that we actually have people, their neighbors, communities, people actually working in those buildings with long-term good paying jobs and not just focused on construction, which is very important. So I'm asking everybody to say, take a breath. This is not the end of the world. We'll get through this. And New York always leads in a smart way. And that's what I'm really proud of what we're doing here.
I want to ask you about election security. We're about 100 days out from Election Day. States administer the elections in this country, not the federal government. Are you getting the kind of election security resources your state has gotten in the last few years? Do you have what you need?
No, the federal government has basically been dismantling all the protections that we've come to rely on to protect this core essence of our democracy, the knowledge that when you cast that vote, that citizen's right, that obligation to determine who our leaders are, that it is uncompromised. It is not being challenged by the federal government just because they're so worried about the upcoming results. That is exactly what is happening. I want everyone to focus on that. Yes, we passed the John Rights Voting Act. It was the toughest protections in the country. And just recently, I signed a law, many protections against what ICE is doing, to say ICE agents cannot show up at polling places. Can you
Right.
see this scenario? Black and brown communities across our country and in New York, where they're all of a sudden on election day to create that fear factor and intimidation factor that they're so good at. I do not want to see that compromise the validity of our election. So what Donald Trump is doing right now is throwing out the biggest red herring you'd ever see and questioning the actual results that are happening. So we're working hard on this year. I'll make sure that we are protected, but I can't count on the federal government for anything this face because they're compromised.
Under federal law, armed agents are not supposed to be at election centers. The Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche, said he'd follow the law, but it sounds like you are still concerned that that might happen. Have you?
They don't follow the law very much at all, Margaret. They don't follow the law much at all. So again, trust but verify. I'm going to verify and ensure that New York State is doing it right. I don't trust that they're going to say this because what happens is they say the day after, like, oh, well, we didn't mean to do it, and oh, sorry about that. You know, these are people who go around killing individuals in our streets. So they have no credibility with me when they say anything.
We will speak to the White House about that topic shortly. Thank you very much, Governor. We'll be right back.
See what I'm saying? Whenever a government gets in this type of unpredictability, it becomes very frightful. It becomes very spooky to the degree that now anything can go. And really, truly, when being a rebel riser, basically just being a troublemaker, it could lead into something such as an uprising. I said all along, but they refuse to do this. That they need a Ross Perot, somebody to go in, independent, that's got good, thorough ideals based around facts, based around credibility, to turn the government around. And it cannot be fixed the way that they're trying to fix it. Just like they're trying to conquer over Iran. You're not going to conquer those people the way that they're trying to do it right now. You can bring pain to them, but all that evil regime is going to do is distribute that pain right down to their citizens, and that means that the elderly, that means that the young, they're going to be taken advantage of that much more. They're going to be suffering that much more. They're going to bring that much more suffering and that much more pain to the citizens of Iran, 90 million people, twice the size of Texas, and that was supposedly the very reason why that Donald Trump went in there to begin with, was to liberate the people. Instead of liberating the people, it's actually giving the oppressors that much more power, because you know good and well, rather than them starving themselves, they're going to throw the burden up onto their own citizens that they don't care about, that they, stand under the umbrella of, and it's just going to bring that much more horror, and I do mean horror, to the citizens of Iran, the way that they're trying to do it right now. And of course, we see the loss of 2 more lives, or possibly 3 more lives, pertaining to what recently went on. What's the American people going to think about whenever we start losing, instead of 1 or 2 lives, 100 lives? Or what's the American people going to do when we have statistics? Well, there's been 1,000 lives lost, or maybe 10,000, or 100,000. then what's the American people, how they going to respond and react to all this? Once more, they're trying to beat the horse on the wrong end by using the wrong type of techniques, not only with the Iran Middle Eastern war, but they're trying to do the same thing when it comes to a solution to the voting authenticity problem. And how come they can't see that? They do see it, they just choose not to want to fix it and repair it properly.
About challenge that we see in our customer base, but as you look at what's really going on, we see a couple things. One is the consumers that our 70 million consumers who spend about $400 billion plus a month are spending about 5 or 6% more money this month of June of 26 versus 25, and likewise in the first part of July here. So they're spending money, and while the consumers reflect on higher gas prices or higher food prices and inflation and things like that, and are worried about it, what you see is, especially the middle third of households and the top third of households by income, their spending is growing faster. What's been interesting, frankly, in the more recent past, in the last couple of months, is we're seeing the wage growth of all income cohorts kind of coalesce together around 3 to 4%, which is good.
So they're holding in there, even though we're seeing gas prices have raised the cost for drivers by 31% since this war with Iran began. I know fuel inventories remain low. How are you thinking about how this geopolitical uncertainty factors in to planning?
So the price of oil and gas affects not only the gas at the pump, which is what you're first reflecting on, and that is up. It actually started coming down, and as the oil prices rise, it might rise back up. But it basically, when we were running around $100 barrel equivalent oil, you were running about a $4 and change gas price. It actually had come down from the months of May to June because that's when the oil started flowing more. But I think if you talk to businesses, it's different. What consumers see is in a concerning nature that is out there, but when businesses see it, they worry about the cost of goods that's coming through the pipeline. So the goods are being manufactured now have imported the oil and gas to go into the plastics production or the material production or whatever it was during the time when gas prices were high. And that's why our team has inflation staying higher all the way into 27, 28, and why the Federal Reserve will probably, our belief was we'll raise rates, whereas 6 months ago they thought the Fed would be cutting rates. They're actually believing they'll raise rates to fight off this inflation, and it will take them a while to get through it.
So raise rates, you think the Fed will act as soon as next week to do that? Or, excuse me, end of the month to do that?
I don't think more towards the end of the year. Our team has them raising rates, and I think based on the recent data that came out, they had 3 rate rises. Whether they hold that with some of the inflation numbers, but the reality is it's sort of the tail end of this year into next year, and it really will depend a lot on the path of other price cohorts other than just oil and gas at the pump, and that's the question of what's going on in housing and food and other places where you're seeing some continued progress being made. It's drifting down. And it's drifting down slower than people would like it. But the reality is this type of inflation takes a long time to squeeze out of the system. When you go back to the post-pandemic infusion of cash and infusion of activity, that just takes a while to squeeze out.
When we looked at Bank of America's earnings recently, you had record sales and trading revenue in the quarter past. A lot of that, some of it churn from energy price swings, but some of it seems from the tech boom of these massive AI companies and the public listings. How do you think about that, what looks like a tech boom?
It's absolutely a strong market for technology and other IPOs. There's biotech, there's biology, there's drugs going out, getting IPO'd and things like that. There's M&A activity. And so when you're talking about the investment banking activity of Bank of America, was up 70% year over year or something like that, and our peers are up like amounts, and that has a lot to do at 50% actually. That has a lot to do with the amount of activity our corporate clients are doing, in part also comparing to last year, which was Liberation Day quarter. The good news is at our company, the nominal dollars we earned in the first quarter and the second quarter went up in investment banking, and that's reflecting the environment around us.
Yeah, Jamie Dimon said it's getting close to as good as it gets. We just don't know how long it's going to last. I guess you're in that same camp. You don't know how long this is going to last.
That's always the pipeline, we measure what we call pipeline. So what's the forward activity that haven't yet booked? In other words, the deals in process,
Yeah.
and that activity is as strong as it's ever been.
Well, it's fascinating because Wall Street is benefiting from this IPO boom around AI, but it is the state of New York, where you are sitting right now, that has now become the first state to bar the construction of large-scale data centers. There's just so much political heat around this idea of not in my backyard. And the president argues this is all a driving force for jobs and a good thing. Do you see more states following suit?
This is a classic struggle of land use, and everybody's working it through, and everybody will work it through differently. Whether it's the stories about New York putting a pause on in terms of further development, while they try to figure out the dynamics of electricity pricing, water pricing, and things like that. There's other states that are saying, Louisiana has a major facility going in. So I think we see it handled differently, but it really comes down to America being America. My community, my town hall, my town meeting, my mayor, my council deciding what they want to do, or my governor. And I think that's where the population is trying to figure it out. And so there's a pretty good tug of war going on, but I think, the facts ought to get on the table, the decisions ought to follow what people want for their community, and then frankly the data center builders will go to the communities that want them.
So I know you've got a FIFA sign next to you, and the FIFA World Cup finals are this weekend. The world's going to be watching. You're a sponsor. Given how high ticket prices are to these matches, have you been surprised at the turnout at the tournaments and the spending?
Absolutely not. Our team did a research piece, Margaret, that said that the total amount that is economically generated on FIFA is about $40 billion, $20 billion would be in the U.S. And then even we look in the host cities like Kansas City, we can see the growth rate in spending faster than other cities. So it's having this on-the-ground economic impact, and that spending is going into what we call bricks and mortars, going to bars and restaurants and things like that, not necessarily only the people in the stadium. And so it's an unbelievable phenomenon I think the United States hadn't seen for a while, seeing again. And to put it in context, they're estimated 2 billion people will watch that the finals on Sunday, which is just an amazing amount. And that's what the brand strategy for us was. We had a great quarter internationally. We have a great international business. It's a very important part of what we do.
You can watch our full interview on our YouTube channel or on facethenation.com. We'll be right back.
It's all about numbers game. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors. God bless America. And heaven, please help us all. Shalom. In Jesus' name. Shalom.